So you got tagged to be the MC for a change of command or a change of responsibility ceremony. Sucker. Congratulations. In this video, we're gonna cover a few things that you need to look at as the MC and how to actually read the script. Check this out. If you're looking for a video on how to build your change of command, a change of responsibility script, this is not the video for that. This is specifically targeting the MC, the person that's gonna read the script and what they need to look at when evaluating the script as they're getting ready for the table read and the actual execution of the change of command or change of responsibility ceremony. If you're here looking for a change of command, a change of responsibility script template, contact your first sergeant. If you're a first sergeant looking for a template, contact your sergeant major. Otherwise, I don't know, I'll throw it out there. Hit me up with 50 send-its and 50 likes. Maybe I'll post a template for you, but this is not the video for that. But if I get those, you know, maybe I'll share a template with you guys. Looking at my screen here, you'll see that page 1, you're the MC. What you're looking at is you need to communicate with your senior enlisted leader, whether it's your first sergeant or your command sergeant major, and you're gonna validate with him the script that you will be looking at during the table read. They should provide a copy to you when you show up. Make sure that this date here coincides with the same date that everybody's looking at. The other thing you're looking at is making sure that the sequence of events, the script actually follows. If it doesn't, bring it up to your first sergeant or your command sergeant major and let them know to make adjustments for future templates. It really doesn't matter, but this is a good guide for you to see what to expect or the layout of the change of command, the change of responsibility itself. The other thing that you're going to be looking at as an MC is that making sure that every name is filled in and that you know how to properly pronounce the names. You should have access to most of the people because these will be members of your unit. If they have a unique sounding or a unique name, make sure you write it down phonetically so you understand and you practice how to pronounce the name so you don't embarrass yourself during the ceremony. The other key piece of page 1 that you need to look at is that you have, and this is for all the pages, that you have a comically large page number on one of the sides of the page. Other than that, you're not responsible for anything else. You're not responsible for filling in any of these names, finding any of these people. The only thing you need to know is how to pronounce the names and that every name is filled out. If it's not there, that's your first sergeant or command sergeant major responsibility to take care of that. You are the narrator, not the script keeper. On page 2, a couple of things I want to point out to you before I start reading the script, but what you're looking at is make sure that the pages are printed single-sided. And if it's binded, to make sure that's in a 3-ring binder in a way that's easy for you to flip the pages, and practice that. Don't try to practice that during the ceremony. Practice that during the table read. Also ensure that the lines are double spaced, that the paragraph has an extra spacing, and that the font is at a minimum size 14. If you have any issues with vision, 16, and if you have to, 18. You want to make sure that these words stick out to you with minimal effort, and ensure that every word is fully capitalized, everything uppercase, and don't bold the entire paper, only bold key segments of the script, and have everything in regular font, capitalized, large enough where you can comfortably read it without getting lost. So here we go, this is what you came for. I'm gonna read through the script and I may pause periodically to highlight certain notes so you can understand what you need to be thinking about when you're executing the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in 5 minutes. Please find your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in 2 minutes. Please be seated and silence your phones. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests, family and friends. On behalf of Lieutenant Colonel, first name, last name, Commander, 123 Special Soldier Battalion, welcome to today's change of command ceremony, during which Captain, first name, last name, will relinquish command of Company A, 123 Special Soldiers Battalion, to Captain, first name, last name. The commander of troops for today's ceremony is Company A, Senior Enlisted Leader, First Sergeant, first name, last name. Among our distinguished guests for today's ceremony is Colonel, first name, last name, Commander, 456 Infantry Brigade. Colonel, first name, last name, Army Division Chief of Staff. Colonel, first name, last name, Army Division G3. and Command Sergeant Major, first name, last name. Command Sergeant Major, 456 Infantry Brigade. Now you notice that on the script, I have Lieutenant Colonel spelled out fully. Within the script, the areas you read, do not abbreviate words unless you're gonna read them as the abbreviation. If you're gonna say IBCT instead of Infantry Brigade Combat Team, the first time, spell it out, Infantry Brigade Combat Team. If in the future, after the first use, you abbreviate the term Infantry Brigade Combat Team, then you can put IBCT, and on the script, you will read it as IBCT. Same thing with every single rank. Spell it out, Lieutenant Colonel, Captain, Company A. If you're gonna say Alpha Company, spell out Alpha. But the more appropriate would be to say Company A, and don't try to say it phonetically. If it's your first time reading the script, I promise you that you are going to speed read the holy crap out of this script the first time. So during your table read, make sure that your first sergeant or your command sergeant major is there and that he's pausing you, that he's paying attention to make sure that you're using every punctuation of the script. Add extra punctuation if it helps you remind you that you need to pause in between certain words or emphasize certain words. I am, rank, spelled out, first name, last name. Your narrators for today's ceremony. The commander of troops will now bring the unit to attention for the arrival of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem and the invocation. If you're given a command to the audience, primarily made of civilians, you need to make sure that you emphasize that command. It is a soft command, but it is accentuated so they get the trigger, because it could be daydreaming, they could be taking pictures of stuff. Make sure that when you say in this part, you're giving commands to civilian audiences, that you are accentuating the first line so it's a trigger for them to listen to what you're saying. I'll say it again. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem and the invocation. The music plays for the arrival of the official party. As the official party arrives, and remember, this is not a script building video. This is a script reading video. If the format that you guys use is different, that's perfectly fine, but I'm just gonna go off of this script. On this script, I'll also assume that every military person is a he and that every spouse is a she. The official party for today's ceremony consists of Lieutenant Colonel, first name, last name, Commander, 123 Special Soldier Battalion. The outgoing commander, Company A, 123 Special Soldier Battalion, Captain, first name, last name. And the incoming commander, Captain, first name, last name. You do not need to include the unit name after the incoming commander because he's nothing, he's a guest. After the transfer of responsibility or transfer of command, you now address him as the commander and unit designation afterwards, and the outgoing, you just address them by their name. One of them is always a guest. In the audience is Command Sergeant Major, first name, last name. Command Sergeant Major, 123 Special Soldier Battalion. The commander of troops will now bring the unit to parade rest. Now here's the thing. I've done these ceremonies where I've had these reminder commands for the commander of troops, and I've had it where I did not have these commands for the commander of troops. If you have a highly competent commander of troops who have done many ceremonies and know the format of your organization's ceremony structure, then by all means, leave it out. Because you and him need to have some kind of telepathic way of communicating during the ceremony, where if he misses a command, you need to find a way to communicate that with him telepathically, or you need to find a way to call an audible and say something like, the commander of troops will now bring the unit to parade rest. If your unit, your organization does not use these trigger phrases for the commander of troops, just skip that mentally and just follow along as I'm reading this. Chaplain, rank, last name for the invocation. And then after that, you can add something, thank you, chaplain, for your inspiring words. And right after the chaplain leaves, you wait for him to exit him go back to his seat and say, please be seated. On behalf of the soldiers of Company A, 123 Special Troops Battalion, rank, last name, will present a traditional bouquet of red flowers to first name, last name, wife of Captain, last name, for her dedicated service to the unit. Specialist Dingleberry will present a traditional bouquet of yellow flowers to first name, last name, wife of Captain, last name, welcoming her into the call sign family. So you can say to Alpha Company or Company A, or if the unit has a call sign like Aztec, that's more personable, right? That brings, as an MC, this is a way for you to bring some inclusion, right? Welcoming that spouse to the command. So a lot of the times I tell units, if you have a call sign, use your call sign. So it reads a lot better when you say, welcoming her to the Aztec family. Now she's one of you. Pause, wait for all of the flower people to return to their designated area, and then also wait for the spouses to put down or place their gift, their flowers or their family's gift, wherever they need to put it so they can pay attention back to what you're about to read. Unit colors are rooted in military history dating back to the 18th century. Colors and symbols were arranged to identify units traditionally positioned at the front of a formation and at the forward edge of battle. The colors served as a rallying point, but also marked the position of the commander on the battlefield. The colors represent not only the heritage of the unit, but also the unity and loyalty of its soldiers. Wherever the commander is, there are the unit colors. The colors are the commander's symbol of authority, representing their responsibilities to the organization. This is really important because this sets the tone for the symbolism of what's about to happen. Just like every part of the script, treat this section, this block, as its own independent thing in the script. Don't think of what came before and don't think about what comes next. As the narrator, your goal here is to hyper-emphasize the symbolism of that guidon they're about to pass and the authority of that person about to take command. The commander of troops will now bring the unit to attention. Pause. This portion of the script talks about the individual movements. Work with your first sergeant and your command sergeant major to make sure that you fully understand what's going to happen next. This is the passing of the guidon. Other mistakes that you make, people may not notice, or they may notice and forget about it. But this right here is the visual representation of the entire ceremony itself. So understand the cues. Some folks will read what's about to happen in advance, and then they go and execute the passing of the colors. Some will talk about the passing of the colors and then narrate each step as it happens. If your organization narrates each step as it happens, you need to read that step, pause, and wait for that exchange to happen. Ensure you rehearse this multiple times. If there's one piece of the script that you need to rehearse first and often, is the actual passing of the guidon, because you, the first sergeant, and the official party need to be in sync throughout that entire portion. Emphasize the word, the change of command ceremony, which is the trigger for them to rise and move forward. The change of command ceremony is a military tradition that is rich with symbolism. The passing of the unit's colors represent the transfer of authority and responsibility from one commander to another. The senior non-commissioned officer of the organization is traditionally the keeper of the unit's colors. He is the spokesperson for both the loyalty and concerns of the soldiers and is the principal advisor to the commander. The commander of troops will now pass the guidon to the outgoing commander, signifying his last act of allegiance. Pause until the action happens. Captain last name passes the guidon to the senior commander, signifying the return of responsibility of which he was entrusted upon assuming command. Pause for the action to happen. Lieutenant Colonel, first name, last name, then passes the guidon to the incoming commander, Captain last name, entrusting him with the responsibility and care of the unit and its soldiers. Pause for the action to happen. Once the incoming commander is paused with the guidon in hand, Under the provisions of the Army Regulation 600-20, paragraphs 2-5 alpha, the undersigned assumes command of Company A, 123 Special Soldiers Battalion, effective day, month, year. Signed, Captain, first name, last name, commanding. Now you see how I read that as the attentional orders portion of an award, because it is a declaration. Read it as such. Do not read this portion like any other portion. Emphasize that at this moment, this person assumes the command, and you need to read it as such. Captain first name, last name passes the guidon to First Sergeant first name, last name, signifying his trust and confidence in the non-commissioned officer corps, and is the First Sergeant's first act of allegiance to his new commander. You wait for all the facing movements from when the First Sergeant receives the guidon. Once they walk back, they do an about face and they stand in front of their chairs. At this point, you'll say, the commander of troops will now bring the units to parade rest. So as the official party are all standing, and the reason why they've remained standing is because you don't want the senior commander sitting down. The First Sergeant calls a command, and then he introducing the senior commander, and then he stands back up. He goes up, does an about face, parade, rest. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel, first name, last name, Commander, 123 Special Soldiers Battalion. Remarks given, you wait for the senior commander to go back to his seat, and once he's seated, ladies and gentlemen, Captain, first name, last name. If your First Sergeant has it on the script, or your Command Sergeant Major has it on the script as the outgoing commander, he's no longer the outgoing commander. He's the former commander. He's the gone commander. So it will be grammatically incorrect to say the outgoing commander. He's out. Once the incoming commander assumed command, that individual is now a guest. So you can give him the title of former commander, but it will be grammatically correct to just say, ladies and gentlemen, Captain, first name, last name. That's it. No need for additional titles. He no longer has one. Remarks given, he goes back to his seat. And as he's transitioning back to his seat, as long as he's not shaking hands, as long as he's just going straight back to his seat and sitting down, then he can say, ladies and gentlemen, the commander of Company A, 123 Special Soldier Battalion, Captain, first name, last name. This is especially emphasized because now you're introducing the new commander for the first time to his formation. So the way that you will read his name is slightly emphasized over the senior commander and the commander that just left, the former commander. Remarks given, the commander of troops will now bring the units to attention. The commander of troops does this thing. Please rise for the benediction and singing of the Army song. So please rise, right? Do that affliction with your voice so they understand that, hey, it's a trigger for them. Oh, I need to get up. Right? So they raise, benediction given. Then you look at the music guy. Ideally, you're not the music person, because if there's something that goes on, the phone goes to sleep or it locks, you shouldn't be sitting there reading the script and then going like this with the phone or whatever device you're using. Have a designated music person. And after that, then everybody needs to know what they need to do. And in this script, I have it that the First Sergeant salutes the official party and says, sir, this concludes the ceremony. And then the unit commander, the new commander, then walk a couple of paces forward from his seated area. He walks a couple of paces forward and goes, take charge and assume business of the day, whatever it is that he wishes to say. Then boom, salutes are rendered. You pause for the commander to start returning to the seat, and you go, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's change of command ceremony. Please join us in bidding farewell to Captain Last Name and welcome Captain Last Name to the command. Thank you for attending. See, it's pretty straightforward. You have to know when to emphasize certain parts. So as the narrator, as the MC, if you need to make notations, marks, highlights, whatever it is that you need to do, as long as they're not distracting, but it gives you visual trigger of when to emphasize certain parts. I hope this helps. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.